Hi all, my name is Jill Marks and I am the Children's Ministry Director at the St. Charles campus. This week we're taking a look at Galatians chapter 4 verses 21 through 31. This section in Galatians refers back to the narrative of Genesis 16 through 21 in which Abraham has a son with Hagar, the servant of his wife Sarah, in order to secure a child for his wife. Of course, we know that Abraham had a son miraculously by his wife Sarah, and so he sent Hagar and her son Ishmael away. Paul chides the Galatians for wanting to be under the law of Moses by comparing Hagar to the law and Sarah to the new covenant with Jesus, stating that the Jews under the law are according to the flesh and that Christians under the law of the Spirit are children according to promise. It's worth exploring the situation in Genesis a little bit. What's interesting is that from what we're told, while God made some bold promises to Abraham prior to his marriage to Hagar, he never explicitly told him that Sarah would be the mother of his son. He just told him that his very own son would be his heir. 10 years after she entered the promised land with her husband, Sarah seemed to have lost hope that she would give birth to an heir herself. Sarah took matters into her own hands, gave Hagar to Abraham to be his wife, and he had a child with her according to natural methods. But God's will is so much bigger than what we expect. All along, he was planning to have Sarah give birth when it was no longer physically possible for her to do so. It's easy to see why Paul compares Sarah to the Christian covenant. The miracle of Isaac's birth parallels the miracle of our new life made possible by Jesus rising from the dead. So did Sarah sin by giving Hagar to Abraham? Well, is it a sin to not expect the impossible from God, especially when God hasn't explicitly told you in advance what he's planning to do? Regardless, it was rather unwise to take this action without consulting God first, which we know from the consequence. For 13 years, Abraham and Sarah fully planned to give Abraham's inheritance to Ishmael. That was the plan. But then God's real plan came to be, and there was an awkward overlap period where Ishmael was still in the house, but Isaac was born. During that time, Ishmael, no doubt upset at losing his special role, persecuted Isaac, which we see reiterated in verse 29. In the same way, Old Covenant Israel, to whom the law of Moses had been given, was expecting to inherit the earth. But God had a bigger plan, the church. Of course, any Jew who wanted to join the church was welcome, but Israel's immediate future was destruction at the hands of the Romans, not inheriting the world through the Messiah. And so there was an awkward overlap period where Israel persecuted the Christians, whether through direct torment or through trickery, like seducing the Galatians to revert to the law of Moses. The Galatians were throwing away their freedom in the Spirit, even though Christ died to redeem them and set them free. So some questions for this week. Where have you taken action that was contrary to God's bigger plan because you didn't have the foresight to understand all that God was planning to do in your life? Where are you reverting back to such a way of life that you created for yourself when God has called you to a greater freedom?